My name is Marin Vale, 34 years old. The laughter hit first, sharp, polished, and cruel. It ricocheted across the backyard like silverware falling onto marble. The whole place looked like a magazine spread. Fairy lights strung between oak trees, white tablecloths, crystal glasses catching the sun just so. Everyone was glowing. Everyone except me. If Paige hadn't called, I wouldn't have gone. I told myself that a dozen times on the drive down. My parents hadn't spoken to me properly since January, not unless it ended with a request. Hope you're well followed by the way. Can you help us out with, and a dollar amount? The only time I existed to them was when something broke. The roof, the car, the silence. But Paige called, the same sister I hadn't talked to since that Thanksgiving blow-up 3 years ago. Her voice sounded smaller, cracked at the edges. You might want to come this year, she'd said. Things aren't what they seem. No explanation, no apology, just that. Maybe I went because curiosity's stronger than caution. Maybe a part of me wanted to believe my family could behave for one afternoon. Or maybe, more honestly, I wanted my son to have grandparents again, even if it meant pretending. 2.5 hours on the road is a long time to argue with yourself. Jamie sat in the back seat, swinging his sneakers against the floorboard, asking what kind of food there'd be. Probably barbecue, I said. Maybe Grandma's potato salad. I forced a smile. My stomach didn't believe it. When we finally pulled up, the house looked smaller than I remembered, but louder. Balloons tied to every post, a hired photographer moving through the crowd like a shadow. My dad was in his usual spot by the grill, spatula in hand, barking orders. My mom was orchestrating photos near the rose trellis, camera ready in sequins. She turned just long enough to wave. No one else greeted us. Jamie tugged my sleeve. Mom, he whispered, why aren't there plates for us? I started to say, they'll bring some, but then I looked. Every table had name cards and place settings, except ours. Even the napkins were folded like origami swans. Dad's laugh cut through the music. We didn't plan for extras, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Extras, like we were distant cousins crashing a stranger's party. I stood there, trying to swallow the heat rising in my throat. My mom adjusted the ribbon on her golden retriever's collar, cooing, hold still for pictures, baby. Then I saw it. A whole separate table, draped in gingham, tiny chalkboard signs, silver bowls filled with roast turkey and salmon. Bottled water with the pets' names printed on the labels. The pets had a place. We didn't. Something inside me clicked. Not loud, just definite. I thought about the $6,500 I'd lent them last spring, the tearful phone call, the promise to pay me back, the don't tell Paige secret. My mother's voice had trembled then, the way guilt trembles when it still remembers what it feels like. I'd believed her. Now they were serving the dog roast turkey off my money. I didn't make a scene. I didn't cry. I just smiled, picked up my purse, and looked straight at my father. Before you start eating, I said evenly, check the joint account. For a second, the air went perfectly still. Then Jamie's small hand slipped into mine, and we walked out. No one stopped us. Not a single person called my name. 15 minutes later, we were parked outside a drive-thru. Jamie was eating fries in the back seat. My phone buzzed nonstop, group chat notifications spilling across the screen. What did you just do? You drained the joint account. We needed that for bills. Everly, grow up and come back. They still called me by my middle name, like erasing me would fix the story. I scrolled through the chaos, watching family loyalty become a weapon in real time. Aunt Marlene chimed in about respecting your elders. Uncle Russ said money makes people ugly. My mom texted a photo of herself holding a plastic box of cookies shaped like bones. Leftovers for Jamie, she wrote. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Then I powered off my phone. When we got home that night, Jamie fell asleep on the couch with ketchup on his chin. I sat beside him, staring at the dark window reflection of myself. The woman looking back wasn't angry. She was hollowed out, quiet, calculating. At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed again. One unread message. Paige. Just 2 words. You were right. I read it over and over, the syllables heavy, almost foreign. Paige had defended them all my life. When I finally stopped sending money, she called me selfish. For her to say you were right meant something had cracked. I didn't reply. Not yet. But for the first time in years, I felt curiosity replacing anger. Whatever she'd seen, whatever changed her mind, I needed to know. Because in my family, Truth was always a story someone rehearsed first, and I was done letting them write mine. Paige picked a diner with chipped blue booths and a waitress who called everyone honey. Morning light pushed through the blinds and narrow ladders, striping the table, turning the sugar packets into little flags. I got there early and ordered coffee I didn't touch. When the bell over the door finally rang, she stepped in wearing a gray hoodie and no makeup, like she'd peeled off the last layer she used to present to them. She slid into the seat across from me and didn't reach for a menu. For a moment, she just watched the steam curl from my cup, as if looking straight at me might break something. "You were right," she said again, and the words didn't sound like surrender so much as a diagnosis. "What changed?" I asked. Her mouth pulled to one side. I started listening to the part of me that was tired. "We let the waitress pour water. The ice cracked like tiny knuckles. After you stopped sending money," Paige said, "things got visible, quieter, sharper, meaner. Mom started calling you our independent one at church, like it was a punchline. Dad told Uncle Russ that you like to make statements. They said it with this," she lifted a shoulder, "tone." "That tone I know," I said. She nodded, eyes bright in a way that had nothing to do with tears. "They were bragging, Marin, not about you helping, about managing you. Mom said we just have to keep the door open a little. Cards on holidays. Ask about Jamie. If we act loving, she'll wander back when she needs us." My knuckles tapped the ceramic. "When I need them," I repeated. "She also said the 6-5 was always a gift," Paige whispered, like the number itself could draw blood. "Told Aunt Marlene you insisted. Said it loud enough that I heard it from the hall." Something in me lifted its head. Not anger. Recognition. "She told me not to tell you," I said. "Said it would cause drama." Paige made a low, humorless sound. "And look at us. Drama, anyway." Silence held our booth for a minute. The diner's clock ticked too loud. A little boy 2 tables over was building a fort with jelly cups. His father didn't stop him. The ordinary softness of it felt like a dare. "I kept defending them," Paige said, voice flat with shame. "I told myself you were overreacting, that they'd pay you back. Then I heard them planning. They make it sound like love and logistics are the same thing, like feelings are tools on a pegboard." "The house isn't a home," I said, remembering the slickness of the reunion, the staged photos, Dad at the grill, performing competence. "It's a machine." She looked relieved, like I had named the bruise. "Exactly. And we all have jobs. You provide. I perform. They manage. Whoever refuses gets replaced with a story." The waitress set down a plate of pancakes neither of us had ordered. "On the house," she said, smiling. When she left, we stared at the syrup pooling into the butter, watched it swallow the edges. "I need to hear it," I told Paige. "Not from them, from you." So she spoke, not in one long confession, but in careful pulls, like thread through a needle. The quiet morning when she overheard Mom say, "If we keep it sweet with Jamie, she'll keep the door cracked." The afternoon Dad used the word leverage about a child. The way relatives were coached. Gentle phrases, grief-colored words, the kind of language that paints you into a corner and calls it concern. "I recorded a couple of conversations," she added, almost apologetic. "I know it's not, but I needed evidence I wasn't crazy. I'll give you a copy." I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt rage finally earning its keep. Instead, I felt a fatigue so clean it almost sparkled. "I'm going to ask them outright," I said. "No more tiptoeing." "Be careful," Paige warned. "They're better at this than we realized." "I'm better than I was," I said, and for once it didn't sound like a promise. It sounded like a fact. At the house, my mother opened the door with a smile that reminded me of the photographer at the reunion, curated, half-inch deep, camera-facing. "Oh," she said, as if I were a package arriving earlier than expected. "You were serious." We stepped into the living room where everything had a place except the truth. Dad muted the TV as if that were generosity. I didn't sit. "I'll keep this simple," I said. "Did you tell people I gifted the money? Did you imply I was unstable at the reunion? And did you decide to keep Jamie close as a way to keep me close?" Dad sighed like a manager when an employee asks for a day off. "You're taking everything the wrong way." Mom folded her hands, those hands that have always looked like apologies. "Sweetheart, we never lied. We just didn't explain every detail. Families don't keep ledgers." "You asked me for a loan," I said. "You promised to pay it back. That's a ledger." "Marin," Dad said, letting my name flatten into 2 letters. "You know life isn't that black and white. It is when you're feeding a dog turkey with money you owe your daughter." His jaw flexed. Mom tried to reach for my arm, then thought better of it. "Don't make this ugly," she said gently, as if ugliness were something I had brought in from the porch on my shoes. "I'm drawing a line," I said. "You don't cross it, not through Jamie." Dad leaned back, eyebrows up. "Or what? You don't want the or what?" They looked at each other, a quick exchange I'd watched my whole life, the two-person language of people who believe the room is theirs. The conversation slid off them like rain off a waxed coat. I felt a clean distance open up between us, the kind that doesn't come with thunder. I left without hugging either of them. That night, I waited for quiet to settle before checking my phone. I expected silence. Instead, I found noise dressed like love. Mom had posted a photo on Facebook, Jamie on her lap from a Christmas long enough ago to look like a different family. The caption read, "We don't get to see him as much anymore, but love is simple. Some bridges burn, but the heart remembers. A red heart, a snowflake, a candle." The comments stacked up like a chorus repeating a hymn. "Stay strong. She'll come back. He'll know who's always loved him." I didn't comment. I didn't even screenshot. I just felt that old familiar burn begin building quietly along the edges of my lungs. The next day, Aunt Marlene texted me a Bible verse about forgiveness with a link to Mom's post. The subtext was loud. "Come back to the story we're telling. Be your role again." I blocked Aunt Marlene for the first time in my life and then sat on the edge of my bed holding the phone I'd turned into a weapon and a shield. In the hallway, Jamie's nightlight threw a small gold lake onto the floor. He murmured in his sleep. I thought about the reunion, the pet table, the photographer who never once pointed her lens at us. I thought about Paige's voice in the diner, thin with the weight of what she'd seen. They replace people with stories. In the morning, my doorbell rang. I wasn't surprised to find my mother holding a plastic box of dog bone cookies, as if irony were a flavor we might all enjoy if we chewed hard enough. "Leftovers," she said, "for Jamie." She glanced past me, inventorying my foyer. "We all say things we don't mean when we're hurt." "Which things?" I asked. Her smile didn't move. "Let's start over." "Return what you owe me," I said. "Admit what you said. Respect the boundary." She tilted her head. "You're still on about the money." "Right," I said softly. "Still." She went for my wrist then. Quick, that old reflex to steer. I stepped back so she caught air. Surprise flickered across her face, not at the refusal, but at the idea that refusal was possible. I closed the door. The cookies looked like props on my entry table, so I put them in the trash and washed my hands twice. Late afternoon, Paige sent me a voice memo. It was short, not the recordings yet, just a thought. When they say start over, they mean reset to their advantage. I played it twice and then saved it to a new folder on my phone called Paper. The name steadied me. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was documenting. That night I told Jamie, in 8-year-old language, that we would be making some changes to keep our home extra safe. He nodded like a small soldier being given a map. "Can we still get a dog?" he asked. The question felt like a door opening in a wall. "Maybe," I said, and the word felt bigger than it sounded. Around midnight, a message from an unknown number popped up and vanished before I could open it. One of those previews that flashes on the lock screen, slippery as a fish. "We just want to be part of his life. No name." But I could hear the voice. I lay awake and counted the machines in my life that I could turn off. The joint account, the spare key my parents still had, the automatic habit of explaining myself. I let the ceiling fan carve the dark into manageable pieces. Somewhere in the house, a pipe ticked like a careful metronome. I breathed with it until my heartbeat slowed. In the morning, I drove to school with a folder in my bag, custody papers, ID copies, a printed letter asking administration to require my consent for any change to pickup. The principal looked me in the eye while I spoke and said, "We've got you." I believed her. On my way out, a teacher tape-gunned a construction paper banner to the hallway wall. "Family Day Friday. Photos welcome." I stood looking at the sign a second too long and felt something cold thread through my ribs. Optics again. I pictured a lens pointed at my son with hands framing the shot that hadn't earned the right to hold him in focus. By the time I reached the parking lot, a different clarity had settled. This was no longer about apology or even repayment. It was about control, mine, reclaimed. There would be a next move. I could feel it gathering like weather. I had already begun making mine. The week after Family Day, everything pretended to be normal. The air was mild, Jamie's laughter filled the kitchen again, and for a few fragile days, I let myself believe the storm had passed. Then came Wednesday. I pulled into the school pickup line at 3:00 and Cog, like always. 10 minutes passed, then 15. No Jamie. Parents ahead of me were waving, buckling their kids in, driving off with smiles and snack bags. When the line emptied and my son still hadn't appeared, something inside me tightened to a single, sharp point. I parked and went inside. The receptionist smiled brightly. "He already left," she said. "Picked up at 2:15. My voice came out colder than I intended. "By who?" She glanced at her screen. "Your parents. They're listed as emergency contacts." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It was like the air in the office turned to glass. "They had ID," she added quickly. "We double-checked. Is everything okay?" But I was already moving. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, knuckles white as chalk. I called my mom. No answer. Called my dad. Straight to voicemail. Paige picked up on the first ring. "I think they took him home," she said, voice trembling. "I'm already on my way there." I didn't answer. I just drove. Every red light was a dare I ignored. When I pulled into their driveway, my heart was a drum in my throat. I didn't knock. I shoved the door open, and there they were. My parents sitting on the couch, Jamie between them, holding a cookie in one hand, wide-eyed. Not frightened, just confused. The kind of confusion that breaks something quiet inside a child. The second he saw me, he stood and ran over. I crouched to his level, touched his face. "You okay?" He nodded. Then I turned to them. "I'm taking him home," I said. Mom lifted a hand. "Marin, please, we just wanted—" "Don't," I said, calm but final. "If you ever take him without my permission again, I will call the police." Dad stood like he wanted to argue, his jaw already set for a lecture. "We just wanted time with our grandson," he said. "You've been so distant." I looked him in the eye. "You kidnapped him." The word landed like a slap. For the first time, they both flinched. I walked out with Jamie's hand in mine, my pulse steady, my silence louder than anything I could have screamed. He didn't speak until we reached the car. Then, in a small voice, "They said you were okay with it." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. I wasn't. He nodded once, pressed his lips together, and stared out the window. That night, he crawled into my bed without asking. He hadn't done that in over a year. When he finally fell asleep, I stayed awake listening to the rhythm of his breathing and realized we were done pretending this was fixable. The next morning, I became methodical. I emailed the school, attached custody paperwork, removed my parents as emergency contacts, and requested written confirmation. I copied the principal and guidance counselor. No more polite assumptions, no more loopholes. I was building a paper trail. Paige showed up that evening with something small in her hand, a flash drive. She didn't even sit down. "Listen to the last file," she said. "Then you'll understand why I'm moving out." She didn't wait for me to respond, just left it on the table and walked out. After Jamie went to bed, I plugged it into my laptop. Static first, then the clink of dishes. My mother's voice, casual, mid-sentence. "She's losing control, Chuck," she said. "Everly, Marin, whatever she wants to call herself, you have to understand, she needs to feel like she's the one setting boundaries. If she thinks it was her idea to cut us off, she'll double down." My father laughed softly. "Then let her. She'll come back when she needs something. Wait till she gets tired or broke." A pause. Then my mother again, voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "Or maybe we go through Jamie. He's soft. He trusts people. If we keep it subtle, we can keep a connection. She won't cut us off completely if we have him." I pressed pause. The silence that followed didn't feel human. I'd thought I'd already known the worst. I hadn't. They weren't just manipulative. They were strategic. They'd made my child part of their plan. And something in me shut down, not from pain, but from clarity. The next morning, I woke up before dawn and made a list. Change locks. Security cameras. New phone plan. Block all numbers. Realtor. Call before noon. By 10 check, the decision was made. I was moving. Not across town, across boundaries, across history. Around noon, while I was on the phone with the realtor, a message came through from my dad. No words, just a video. I opened it. It was an old clip of Jamie in their backyard, maybe 2 summers ago. He was barefoot, laughing, running through a sprinkler, sunlight cutting through the spray like glitter. At the end, my father's voice off camera. That's our boy. No caption, no apology, just a reminder of ownership disguised as nostalgia. I stared at it until my screen went dark. They thought love was leverage. They thought memories were a currency I'd still trade in. I blocked them on everything. Then I called Paige. They'll keep pushing, she said quietly. They don't know how to stop. I do, I said. I'm done playing their game. For the first time, she didn't argue. She just said, then let's pack. By evening, I'd found a moving company and a new listing across state lines. Jamie was in the living room, drawing a picture of a house with a big tree and a dog beside it. He looked up, smiled, and said, "Can we get one like that?" I stared at the drawing for a long time. "Yeah," I said softly, "we can." Because sometimes the only way to protect what's yours is to leave behind the people who taught you not to trust love unless it hurts. Boxes, tape, the smell of cardboard, and resolve. That's what my house became in the week that followed. Paige came every evening after work, iced coffee in one hand, a roll of bubble wrap in the other. Jamie made towers out of the boxes, asking if he could label some himself. He wrote our stuff in crooked Sharpie across everything. We moved through each room like surgeons, careful, precise, cutting out the past without flinching. When the realtor stopped by, she complimented the space. I didn't tell her this house had become a battlefield. By the time she left, I had already decided we weren't waiting. We were getting out before the next storm. 3 days later, the doorbell rang. I checked the camera before moving. My father. Alone. He looked smaller, or maybe it was just the way guilt folds people inward. He held something in his hand, a manila envelope. When I opened the door, he didn't try to step inside. He just held it out. "Your mother's really hurt," he said, as if that was my problem to solve. I didn't respond. He tried again. "We didn't mean for things to go this far." I took the envelope, closed the door, locked it. Paige glanced up from the couch. "She's still spinning the story," she said. "He's just the delivery system." I didn't open it right away. That night, when the house was quiet and Jamie was asleep, I finally unfolded the letter. 3 pages. The first full of vague regrets. "We didn't realize we were hurting you. We only wanted to stay connected." The usual spin. But halfway through, the tone shifted. "The roof still isn't done. We've been falling behind on bills. Maybe you could reconsider the $6,500 as a gift. It meant a lot to us." And then, scribbled at the bottom in my mother's handwriting, "P.S. Don't punish Jamie by keeping him from us. He loves us. We miss him." A gift, not a loan. The rewrite was complete. I folded the letter once, dropped it into the shred box, and didn't even feel my pulse rise. They weren't apologizing. They were repositioning. 2 days later, the school called. "Ms. Vale," the principal said, cautious. "Someone came by at lunch asking to see Jamie." My heart skipped. "Who?" "Your aunt." She said it was a surprise visit. I was already in the car before the call ended. By the time I arrived, my aunt was sitting in the office, pretending to check her phone. She looked startled when she saw me. "Marin, this is all a misunderstanding. Your mother just thought—" "I'm sure she did," I cut in. "You can leave now." The principal stepped between us, firm and apologetic. "We'll make sure this doesn't happen again," she said quietly. Her eyes told me she believed everything I hadn't said. That evening, I started looking at hotels. I wanted space, real space, between us and anyone who thought biology was a rite of entry. By dawn, the car was packed. 2 suitcases, Jamie's favorite blanket, the stuffed lion he'd had since he was 3. We left a note on the fridge for the realtor. "Please lock up after showing." The hotel was sterile and beige, an extended stay place with a kitchenette and curtains the color of oatmeal. But it was quiet. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. Jamie curled up on the second bed with his new stuffed dog, Penny, the one we'd promised to replace with a real one once we moved. On the 3rd morning, Paige knocked once and came in with a tired smile. "I found something," she said, holding up a listing. "A duplex, close to Jamie's new school. Small yard, real porch." I felt my throat tighten. "Ours?" "Ours," she said. We moved in 2 weeks later. The air smelled like fresh paint and possibility. Jamie picked the smaller room, the one with the slanted ceiling, and taped his drawings to the wall. True to my word, we adopted a dog that same week, a brown and white mutt with ears too big for her head. Jamie named her Penny. For a while it was peaceful. No calls, no messages, no footsteps I didn't recognize. I'd blocked everyone, changed our numbers, updated every record. It felt like safety had finally learned our address. Then, one night, I was tucking Jamie in when he handed me something he'd made at school. A red construction paper heart, glitter glued to the edges. Inside, written in pencil, "To Grandma and Grandpa, I miss you." I smiled because he needed me to. "Did your teacher help you with this?" I asked gently. He shrugged. "Everyone made one, for family." "Do you want to send it?" He hesitated. "Maybe later." I kissed his forehead and turned off the light. Later, when he was asleep, I sat on the porch with Paige. She lit a cigarette, the smoke curling in the cool air. I told her about the card. "You're not cruel for protecting him," she said. I nodded, but part of me still ached. That stubborn daughter part that kept wondering if they could ever change. The next evening, an email arrived from an address I didn't recognize. "We know where you are. Don't worry, we'll be quiet. Just want to be part of his life. Families always come back together in the end." No signature, but I didn't need one. I printed the message, slid it into a folder labeled "If They Try Again," and closed my laptop. Outside, Penny barked once, sharp and alert, before settling again. The wind pushed against the window screens like someone testing the locks. I stared into the dark and whispered, mostly to myself, "Not this time." Because this peace we'd built, fragile, imperfect, hard-earned, wasn't theirs to touch anymore. It happened on a Thursday, Jamie's favorite day, science club after school, the one with experiments, puzzles, the joy that made him forget everything else. I left work a little early, like always, planning to pick him up at 4:15. The air smelled like rain, and I remember thinking maybe we'd stop for ice cream on the way home. For a few minutes, life felt simple again. Then I got to the school, and the classroom was empty. The teacher looked confused when I asked. He left at 3:45. Someone called saying there was a family emergency. The words hit like cold water. "Who called?" "A woman," she said. "Said she was you. The substitute confirmed your number." My hands went numb. I called the office, the principal, then Paige. My voice didn't even sound like mine. "They've done it again," I said. And Paige, steady, fierce Paige, answered, "I'm already driving." We found them less than an hour later at a frozen yogurt shop 10 minutes away. Jamie was sitting at a table with my mother, spoon in hand, eyes bright but uneasy. He wasn't scared. He was trying to believe everything was okay. When he saw me, the spoon slipped from his hand. I crossed the room before anyone could speak. "Jamie," I said softly, "we're going home." He stood immediately. My mother's face went pale. "Marin, please don't make a scene." "You pretended to be me," I said. "That's not a scene. That's a crime." People were staring now. Forks paused in midair. My father walked in from outside carrying 2 cups, froze when he saw us. "We just wanted to spend time with him," he said. "You've made it impossible." I turned to him, calm in a way that scared even me. "If you ever go near my son again," I said, "I will press charges. This is your only warning." He tried to laugh it off, but it came out brittle. "Don't be dramatic." I didn't respond. I just took Jamie's hand and walked out. In the car, he whispered, "Grandma said you were sick." I stared straight ahead. I wasn't. He nodded once, understanding too much for his age. That night, I didn't sleep. I changed his school again. I called a lawyer, filed paperwork. Official, final, irreversible. Paige came over, eyes red from anger. "They don't see it," she said. "They still think it's just another argument." "It's not," I told her. "It's over." For once, the words didn't tremble. 6 weeks later, life found a rhythm again. Penny slept at the foot of Jamie's bed. Paige left early every morning for work, but always brewed an extra cup of coffee and left it on the counter for me. Jamie was thriving, laughing more, sleeping without nightmares, running into school with no backward glances. Sometimes in the evenings, we'd all sit on the porch, Jamie drawing, Paige scrolling, me just breathing. The kind of quiet that doesn't need to prove its peace. Then one afternoon, the mail arrived. Among the bills and flyers was a thick envelope with no return address. The handwriting was unmistakable. I didn't open it. I placed it in the drawer beside the folder, labeled, "If They Try Again." The past could sit there, sealed, where it belonged. Because some endings don't need confrontation. They need distance. That night, Jamie crawled into my bed holding Penny's paw and asked, "Are we safe now?" I brushed the hair from his forehead. "Yes, sweetheart, we're safe." He fell asleep quickly, his breathing steady, the way children breathe when the world finally feels kind again. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about how love can rot when it's built on control. About how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop explaining yourself to people who never intended to understand. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the blinds, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like interrogation. It felt like permission. I made coffee. Paige smiled sleepily as she joined me. Jamie came running in with Penny close behind, laughter spilling ahead of him like light. And in that ordinary moment, bare feet on kitchen tile, dog nails tapping, coffee scent thick in the air, I understood something I should have known all along. Family isn't who raised you, it's who rises with you.